What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis, and I'm glad to see you back to ride with me to another service call. The customer called in, basically says the unit's running but just not cooling. So basically we'll go ahead to the customer's house, and as soon as we get there and I talk to the customer, I'll get back and let you know exactly what he says. Alright, we just arrived to the customer's house. I just talked to the customer. What he says is he's got a Nest thermostat. He turns it down. The system runs and runs and runs, but just won't cool. I went in, as always. I turned the thermostat to cooling. It's a Nest thermostat, so it had power. So we know the thermostat has power, being that it's a Nest. Once I turned it to cooling, everything kicked on. The fan blew. So we know the thermostat has power. We know the fan is blowing. So let's go ahead and head to the condensing unit and see what's going on. Alright, so we're walking around to the condensing unit now. This thing is the upstairs unit, so it's this one here. This thing's awful noisy. And the first thing I notice is I put my hand down here at the unit, and it's cold air blowing out. So that tells me more than likely something's going on with the freon or something's going on with the compressor, because it doesn't feel like it's actually blowing any heat. So as noisy as the thing is, I can't tell if the compressor is running. Alright, my lines aren't cold. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to hook up our freon, we'll hook up our gauges. Alright, I've got the blue line going to our suction side. We got a red hose going to our high side. Alright, let's look at our gauges. Alright, if we notice this, both the low side and the high side are both equalized. Let me turn this on. Alright, when I put the gauges on, well, when I first came out here, I checked to make sure everything was running, my fan was working, but this thing was vibrating so bad, I couldn't tell if the compressor was working or not. So I put my gauges on, and the readings that I'm getting is an equalized pressure. I have an equalized pressure on my suction and my head, and they're both around 150 psi. Now, when a system is running and you have equalized pressure and it is not pumping freon, it means your compressor is not working. So so our next step is we need to take our panel off and check our compressor and see what's going on. Alright, guys, the panel off, and here's our contactor for the compressor. Looks like somebody rigged the compressor, made a capacitor for the fan. Guess that's been replaced recently. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check our capacitor for the compressor and basically see if that's good. Alright, we know that the unit has power and all of our lines are hooked up, so we know we've got power going to our compressor. The first thing that we want to check when a compressor goes out is your capacitor. This is a dual capacitor, but they took the wires off for the fan motor and just left it wired up for the compressor. So basically I'm going to check my HERM terminal and my common terminal for my capacitor, and we're reading 0. So that tells me that the capacitor for the compressor gone out and is not working. So let me get a capacitor, let's pop it on, and let's see if it starts up this compressor. Alright, so we got the wire off. We'll take these wires off here. We're going to remove the capacitor. Alright, I got the capacitor back in. Alright, our common wire goes to our C terminal. Our compressor wires goes back to our HEMR terminal. HERM terminal, I'm sorry. Alright, so we got this hooked back just like the other capacitor was. Now let's start this thing up and see if our pressures start to change. Alright, as we see our pressures start to change, that means our compressor is running. So the problem with this AC unit was the capacitor was out. I know we've done capacitors here on the channel before, but this shows you never assume that the only thing that will diagnose a blown capacitor is if you go out and the fan motor or compressor isn't working, because as you see, someone had actually replaced the blower motor, the condenser motor in the past, put a whole different capacitor on that. So the condenser fan motor was working on this one, but what was not working was your compressor, which they still had hooked up with that dual capacitor. So always when you go, you have to go a little bit further and see what's going on with the system before you diagnose it. But this one was definitely a capacitor. Alright, and our freon looks good. This is an old carrier unit with R22. And it's a little warm in the house, so our pressures are going to be a little bit higher. So that was it. Another capacitor bad, causing an air conditioner not to work. I tell you, these capacitors are one of the most common problems with AC systems, you know, and causing the system not to cool. I mean, they're sort of like light bulbs. One minute they work, and when you put a lot of strain on them, especially during, you know, in North Carolina, the heat of July and August and those type of months, it just puts a big strain on them, and those capacitors, they'll pop very, very easy. So we got the capacitor replaced. We checked our freon. Our freon is good. The next thing and last thing we do on every service call, like I always tell you, is always go to your furnace or your air handler. Check your temperature drop. Check it leaving your evaporator coil, and check it when you return right there at the furnace. And make sure that thing is cooling. And you want to get right around that 18-degree temperature drop. So basically, anytime you do a service call, always check that, because if you skip that step, and you know, you never know, something else could be going on that you're missing, and the customer end up calling you back an hour or two later saying the system is not cooling, and you come back and you find something else, maybe something with the drain or something like that. So always check your temperature drop and make sure everything's cooling. If you do that, you'll know everything's good. So guys, thank you again for watching. It's always a pleasure showing you guys how to do things. I hope you learned something, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to me if you do, and hope you come back for the next video, and if you do, I'll be here waiting on you. Thanks again, guys. Bye.